Hello, hello. Welcome to this episode of the Rogers Radio Podcast. I am your host, Alyssa Rogers. And as you can hear, my voice is still not all the way back yet. I know I mentioned that I was sick last week, and here we are. We're still moving along. I have a cough drop in my mouth, so hopefully I won't do too much coughing, because this is a really important podcast episode to me. We have Tom McLaughlin here, owner of the Mecklenburg Sun newspaper. I was just telling Tom before we started that we have a guru person in the building today. I am by no means anywhere close to the experience that you have in media, and I'm really, really excited to get into the questions and get to know you better. So thank you for being here today.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you for the chance.
Yes.
So anyway, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because, the newspaper is such a big part of our community, and it has always been, and people don't always think about that. Like worldwide, you hear newspapers, like, is it dying? Is it not? And I believe it's not. And I know in our community that is very important. And so I kind of want to get into that and where you see the future of it.
Well, of course, I guess maybe people will know who watch and listen to this. Maybe they won't. But we had two newspapers.
Yes.
And of course, we, as people around Halifax, South Boston know, our newspaper here in town, the News and Record, we discontinued it last November. So that's a loaded question. We, of course, still have our newspaper in Mecklenburg County, the Mecklenburg Sun.
Yeah.
And that is, it's doing a little better and bumping along, I would say. And for a newspaper in a small town, that's actually saying something. I come from probably one of the most beleaguered industries in the country, which is local journalism. And it's a huge issue, and I think about it all the time. It's basically been my life. So there's a lot to say there. So we can start wherever.
Let's start there, because I want everyone to hear your story on what led you to where you are today. How did you get started in journalism, and what has kept you in journalism for so long?
Well, as far as how I got started, that's an easy one. In 1973, my father, late father, purchased the South Boston News and the Record Advertiser, which were owned by the same family, basically. But we bought into it, bought half. We ended up owning all of it. And it was going out of business when he purchased it. So Dad felt very strongly that Halifax County needed alternative voices, needed a second voice. Halifax, and really Mecklenburg too, are extremely unusual in that for years and years and years, and continuing in Mecklenburg, there's more than one newspaper. Mm-hmm. Most small towns, small cities, big cities for that matter, only have one newspaper. So we've always been this kind of anomaly of a competitive newspaper town, which for the size of South Boston is just unreal. It's just not done. Mm-hmm. And we have this very unlikely and frankly a little unbelievable story that I have a hard time telling people from the outside, because they just can't seem to comprehend that someone would go into the business for the sake of, of course it was always a business, but not primarily a business. It really was more of a family mission. Mm. So that's what I grew up with, and I liked it. It's interesting work. We were talking about that just before we went live here, and it is, you're always doing something new in this field, and it's always attracted people. For that reason, journalism is one of the worst paying professions that you can choose. Our kids, we told them, you can't do this. Your dad's only big enough dummy to do it, and the only one who, you live and learn kind of thing. So we highly discourage them from the field, but it is an interesting field. And I've always thought it's an important field, and that's basically what I've been doing since I got home from college. I came back the day after I graduated, went to work for the family newspapers, and I'm still at it.
And still doing an amazing job at it, and really showcasing the local community. What are some challenges that you're facing now? I mean, I know you said that you closed down the News and Record and you have
Right.
just the Mecklenburg Sun now. With this new digital age, how are you navigating that and the changes?
Well, the answer is we're really not.
Yeah.
It's we closed the News and Record, not because we had fallen off in readership or because we'd fallen off in just the support of our advertisers or community, what have you. We closed it because it was always a family business with three principals: myself, my mother, and my brother. And my mother passed away in 2018. My brother passed away last year. And it was just too much for me to pick up what they had been doing. We all always worked very hard. To the question of old media versus new media, that is something that very few, legacy or an incumbent news organizations have really figured out. I mean, there are a few, the New York Times, maybe the Wall Street Journal. The rest of big city dailies, newspaper chains, I mean, they're all struggling with how do you create a business model to replace the old one, which we can talk about a little bit. Because, our choice, for better or for worse, has been to ride the old model as long as we can. and it works around here. Halifax, Mecklenburg, we're older communities. People do like their newspaper. I do think it makes a difference.
Yep.
But, you really kind of faced with a challenge of how do you run a business when essentially your audience, and this is being generous, is going to be, 40, 45 years and up. So, that's, it can be done, but it requires a tremendous amount of effort. And, just the idea of trying to cover even a little town like Halifax or South Boston, it's a lot. I mean, it really is. It's our issue today, which I gave you, I ended up writing, a couple of stories for that, and I laid in all the pages and sold a bunch of the ads, and it's just and make payroll. I mean, all the things that you do as a small business person.
It's a daily grind.
It's a grind.
Yeah.
And this was actually somewhat of a light week. I've got a heavier week next week. So, and we, things happen in the world. Hurricane Helene. We had 2 stories in the paper about what our local folks are doing in response to that. And, you just wake up every day. You don't know what you got. It's,
and how do you keep up with that? And because we are in a world where we have everything at our fingertips.
Yep.
And we see what's going on in real time.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do you pick and choose what you're going to run in the paper?
Well, a lot of it is
to make sure it's not old news.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
I mean, you make a pragmatic choice of what can I do, and you make judgments. Some of it, a lot of what we do, you want to know about the day to day.
Yeah.
A lot of it really is just sort of laid out for you. I mean, we have meetings we go to, we have, these sort of routine things that we do. Without a newspaper, without a local newspaper, people go to these things, but no one's going to tell you what's going on.
Right.
And no one, if they do tell you what's going on a Facebook or what have you, you just go get a piece of it. I have a bad case of galaxy brain all the time. Things hit me and I get a little wrapped up in them and start getting a little confused but you just try to keep tabs on it as best you can. And I try to return all my phone calls. I've been very bad about that lately. But people will call me up and say, here's a story, or did you know about this, or so-and-so is doing such and such. And a lot of times that does lead to stories, but you really do have to have to have a bit of a filter when it
For
comes to that.
sure.
You know, it's
You're constantly living in the rabbit hole.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. I mean, I can find myself in rabbit holes. I can't imagine being there all the time.
you know, it's interesting about little towns. I've always contended that they have just as good as stories as big cities
Yeah.
do. You know, I think the nicest thing anyone ever said to me was, "Oh, you could go work for a big city newspaper somewhere." And this fellow's wife says, "That is a terrible thing to say because we need that here in South Boston." And you know, that did make me appreciate what we do. We don't do it perfectly. We just like everyone else, we slip up, we fall short, but we do work at it.
You
So,
do. And speaking of that, what has been the most rewarding piece for you in working with the community and doing what you do?
I think really the most rewarding thing is just to let people know what's going on. You know, I think the last 5 years in this business have been the hardest of my career. And part of that was just due to the fact my mother died. She was a longtime editor of the News and Record. I actually spent most of my years, the first 30 or so of my shockingly long career, doing the same thing, working with a paper in Mecklenburg. And my brother Tucker and my mother were here, more established in South Boston. And when she passed away, I had to step in and do her work as the paper's newspaper editor. I was always in the background, and all of a sudden in the foreground. And, you know, of course, that just meant a lot of work. But it wasn't long after she passed away that we went into the pandemic. And this kind of gets to your point. What do I enjoy the most? The pandemic was a miserable experience.
Yes, it was.
You know, it's a bit frustrating to me to see people kind of memory hole what all that was, because I would go to meetings, and I particularly think of the Halifax County School Board.
Yep.
And, you know, here are 8 members of our local school board who come from various walks of life. You know, there was a retired teacher or two, a retired bus driver. There were people who had no direct connection to the school, or maybe they were married to a teacher. I mean, across the board. The one thing that unified them was the fact that not one of them was prepared for what they were about to face. You know, it's just like, how do you ask people, just ordinary walks of life, to come in and decide what we're going to do about school when we got a virus going around that, you know, is deadly to people? And we don't know. We don't know what it is. We don't know the effect it'll have on students. We don't know the effect it'll have on staff. It wasn't just about the kids. It was also about the 60-year-old staff members who might be in the cafeteria or in the classroom. So we had to protect them all. And, you know, I really admired the fact that these people even showed up to the meetings.
Wow.
You know, because frankly, I would have crawled in a hole maybe and just covered my head, you know, faced with that type of dilemma, that kind of challenge. So, you know, I thought my role was just to try to communicate the frankly kind of unbelievably difficult circumstances that these debates were taking place. And they were some hard debates. I mean, do we open the schools? When do we send kids back to class? Ironically, the other hard debate got totally put on ice during this time, which was what to do about our high school in South Boston. And, you know, there had been momentum to try to get moving on this prior to the pandemic. That got put on complete hold. We came off the pandemic. We're hitting this inflationary spiral in your industry, construction. So people are like, oh my God, look at these numbers that we're looking at. Well, you know, a lot of those numbers were the result of the fact that by necessity, we just weren't prepared as a county to deal with what to do about the high school. We had to get through this crisis first. So, it was very difficult to report these things, and I mean, in part because these meetings went on forever. And, there are lots of very passionate voices in every direction, and you want to try to be fair to that debate when you write it. So, that was very difficult, and it really just wore me out, honestly. But it was also, I did feel like it was important. And, that kind of gets to the whole point of why I do this anyway.
It all makes sense.
It was, it just, I was exhausted, but I felt like I'd done something to at least earn it.
Absolutely.
So, and I want to make very clear that what I was doing was a hell of a lot easier than what they were doing.
Makes sense.
I don't want
For sure.
to put myself forward as some sort of, martyr or hero or anything like that, because the opposite is true. There were no real heroes. There were just people trying to do the best they could.
And do you find that, local journalism, small town living in journalism, you get to see communities come together, and you get to be in those
Sure.
rooms, and, a lot gets talked about with elected officials and small groups and the decisions they have to make, but you get to see the inside of what really goes into it.
Well, I'm always outside the room.
Right.
You ever see Hamilton, the play? To be, I want to be in the, what's the lyric? I want to be in the room when it happens. I'm not in the room when it happens, except in the public-facing portion of it, which very debatable how much it actually happens in a meeting. It's all what happened before the meeting. So, I do try to suss that information out as best I can. Try to have a little sense of what I'm walking into. You see the community come apart. You see the community come split apart. We are kind of one of the ideas of journalism is that you're supposed to just remove yourself from the outcome. I'm not supposed to have a rooting interest. My brother Tucker, who covered ACC sports,
Yes.
he was such a Duke homer, but he would never want anybody to know this because as a reporter, he's supposed to be neutral. He's supposed to be objective. And, I think the only time I really saw Tucker get angry was when my father suggested, after he asked him for money or needed money or something like this, my father suggested he should sell his ACC press pass. He could get all kinds of money for this. And he was just mortally offended by this idea.
I can hear
that
it.
he would take his hard-earned press pass that bestows, this respect of him as a reporter and just put it up for auction. He got really furious about that. So.
Oh, Tucker.
Yeah.
The many stories of Tucker.
Yes, I'm
How
sorry that
amazing he
Tucker
was.
isn't here to do your podcast.
I know.
He'd get higher ratings than I ever will.
So, speaking of kind of your style,
Right.
and you do a lot of writing, and you're a fantastic writer.
Well, thank you.
And I love reading all of your stuff, so thank you for everything you do. But what is your style? When is your best writing time? How, what does it look like? I just envision this war room, and what time of day are you writing most?
Well, I'm hit the Pavlovian dog phase of my writing career where I can only write under deadline.
Yeah.
So if you don't give me a deadline, I'll find something else to do. When I have a deadline, it's kind of time to hunker down and get it done.
So you're like a last minute, gotta get it done.
Oh, God, I'm the worst.
I'm the same way.
I'm terrible.
Yes. So if you know about something for days, you're going to wait until the last minute.
Sure.
To get it all. That's your best work.
You let it simmer and stew a little bit.
I am so with you.
Slow
on that.
cooking, right?
I'm so with you on that.
Yeah, no, I'm terrible. And I always have been. in college, I was just, I turned in my senior thesis 3.5 weeks late, 4 weeks late.
Tom,
Oh, it was terrible.
hey, you made it through though,
It was a
right?
good thing I got an A on it because I got docked down to like a D
Oh my
minus or something. Oh yeah,
gosh.
yeah. It was a complete fiasco. It was a pretty good thesis, but no, all my buddies were like, where is he? Where's Tom? We have a party going on. I'm like trying to get my thesis finished up.
Hey, great writers wait till the last minute.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the best
yeah.
work.
Yeah, definitely. Just, they,
So you mentioned that you told your kids, don't get into journalism.
right.
But there are many people out there that are still wanting to get into it. So, what advice do you have for future journalists or entrepreneurs that are looking to get into kind of the media side of the industry?
Well, I'm a big believer in fundamentals. So, I do think that a newspaper job, while they're out there, and they are out there. I mean, there are all types of news organizations that need writers. They just don't pay them anything.
Right.
But you learn a lot. And, just the tenets of writing and the tenets of reporting. It's an interesting field in that you have a lot of really talented people who do it. And some people make decent enough money. It's just at the local level, it's hard to do. But these folks who get into it and are good at it basically can do anything. I mean, they would be ace lawyers. They would be, I don't know that they'd be much good at, say, truck driving. I mean, but they might, because the things that you are asked to do in our business, I think apply across, any number of fields. I mean, we got to get up to speed. We've got to go find out what's going on. We've got to research our facts. We've got to double check. We've got to communicate. We've got to organize. It's just one of these wide-ranging kind of skill sets if you do it well. If you don't do it well, you still got, things that a lot of people have struggled to do. I mean, I struggle to write. I think everybody struggles to write.
I think so too.
I think that I think I've known a few people in my life for whom it just comes naturally. My wife actually is one of them. She's a great writer.
Yeah.
She got out of the business about a decade ago because of the things that are driving lots of journalists out. Just uncertainty about the future. So she teaches now. She's a wonderful teacher. I'm very proud of the work she does. And that's helped her in the classroom. I mean, just getting to the point to my earlier point about the applicability of everything we do. Because you're thrown out there day after day. You have no idea what you're necessarily going to be dealing with. If you do know what you're dealing with, then you're likely to have your whole worldview upended by something that happens. You just kind of have to roll with it. And the ability to roll is pretty valuable no matter what you do in life. So, that's how I look at it. What would I tell young journalists? I would tell them, go find a newspaper job, learn the trade a little bit. But, there are opportunities in podcasting, there are opportunities in new media. I'm not really familiar with. I probably need to get familiar with them.
Welcome.
But, it's, I don't feel too bad about that because I do know that I've never been to business school, never will go. But I do know one of the things they teach in business school is the difficulty of running one business and trying to start another.
Yeah.
We have a legacy business. We have an established model that goes back to the 18th century, really, 18th century. And it's changed in many, many, many ways since then. I mean, untold numbers of ways, but we do kind of do the same thing when you get right down to it. And new media is doing the same thing. We're telling stories.
Yep.
We're trying to tell people what's going on in their world. And I don't think the need or the demand for that will ever go away. But, how you sustain this business, how you make payroll, how you pay your employees, how you hire people, keep them from going into higher paid fields. Part of it is the fact that it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is also the fact you still got to pay them. And, you still got to give people platforms. On the other hand, the storytelling is as old as mankind itself, so that part's not going away. We just have to come up with business models to make it work. I'm in a business model that around Southern Virginia, we might have a good 15, 20 years run. We'll see. It's
I think we need to bring you on more.
I fight that battle every day.
I think, what does everyone watching and listening think? I think we need to have you on more often and do like hot topics. And get you on here telling all the hot topics going on in the county.
You catch me on a week when I'm not when I'm not fighting for air and trying to get to the surface of the
like
pond.
Once a month, letting us know what the hot topics are that's happening. What does everyone think? You need to comment and let us know.
I reach into the camera and pull it out.
Get you on the side too.
Yeah, well, it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A long time ago, I actually did a radio show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, in South Hill.
Okay.
The radio station out there. I forget the call letters, but it was the established station in town. I knew the people who work there, who don't work there anymore. But Greg Thrift was sort of the daytime personality, so to speak. And he came up with this complete dingbat idea of he would invite me over and we would just talk about the news each week.
Yes.
So I was doing that pretty much on a weekly basis. And we had a lot of fun with it.
Well, we need to make this happen. I think that would be a great idea.
Okay.
So let's talk.
Okay, we'll talk.
So what?
I come extremely cheap, as in free.
All right.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I'm like kind of telling you what the future is for you here. What are you seeing your future like? What's going to be happening? You've had, a lot of change in the last 5 years, and a lot's been going on. And so what do you see next for you?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I want to keep doing it for sure. And we, just to clarify for people listening, the established model for newspapers is you get a bunch of readers, you sell ads to businesses based on the fact you have an audience. Mm-hmm. So we're all, whatever, it's new media, old media, what have you, we're all trying to build our audience. We're all trying to establish a connection with our audience and we expand it and, hope that is the basis to paying for it. A lot of newspapers have seen their advertising revenue collapse. And that's a big issue in their business.
Yeah.
So we're fighting Facebook, we're fighting Google, we're fighting everyone but particularly those two, that have just sort of gone in and scooped up all the advertising revenue that went to newspapers. I don't have the facts in front of me, but what I can tell you is that, in the last 20 years, the print media business has just gotten clobbered by those two firms in particular.
Yeah.
And I go out every day, I'll sell ads, and people will tell me, I put something up on Facebook. And fine, I have no problem with that. People in business need to do what works for them.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Just a history, everyone that watches and listens, they know that Rogers is really big in advertising, and we're on all platforms. So we utilize Facebook and Google and newspaper and print, lots of print. And something I learned very early on, because I started my career with the health system. And the health system, Halifax Regional Health System, was very big in print and newspaper advertising. And so I learned a lot about it then. And so when I came here, I said, you know what, this is major. There are still a lot of people that read the newspaper And so we've always advertised in the newspaper.
Yeah, you're wonderful.
And the stats that we have, because we put different phone numbers on our different media sources to kind of track where our calls are coming from, and we still get calls from newspaper ads that we've run in the News and Record, the Mecklenburg Sun,
Well,
and
good.
you know, it does work, and people
Right.
cut them out and put them on their refrigerator and call.
I never ask an advertiser to give me a ad because I'm a nice guy or not a
Right.
nice guy,
It works.
or you know, because we need to do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I always approach it with people of this is a return on your investment. It may not be as instantaneous as throwing something up on Facebook.
Right.
You know, but it makes an impression, and we have a robust audience of readers. Again, the News and Record didn't go out because we lacked
Right.
readers. It went out because I was about to, you know, break myself.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just so stressful to try to do everybody's jobs. And that said, you know, we have to go out there and argue this case every day. It's great to have you argue it for me. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, it works.
Yeah,
It
and-
really does work.
And yeah, I believe it works. I know we place ads internally for maybe for help, or maybe we have a old car to sell, and yeah, I get plenty of response off of it. It's I was living, even my wife Eva and I, we lived in Oxford, North Carolina for a very short period of time. She was working in Raleigh with the Raleigh News and Observer, and I was up here. And living in Oxford, we had occasion just to place an ad or two in their local newspaper, the Oxford Public Ledger. I don't even know if it's still in business, honestly, but we got all kinds of calls on this. I think we were sounding like a dog cage or something like that. And it was surprising how many people called. But, you know, for a newspaper, we're in a fairly safe space, so to speak. We know what our community is. The community knows who we are, and there's a bond there. A lot of newspapers have not done that, and in part that's because of maybe the areas they live in are a little more transitory, you know, people moving in, moving out, that type of thing. Not so much here. A lot of it's just the newspaper industry was incredibly lazy for years and years. And this is all coming back to bite us because I had a really interesting conversation with a local advertiser, good friend of mine. I'll leave his name out of the conversation. He was telling me about running his business, I guess it was probably about 40 years ago. He was telling me, oh God, it used to be that if I missed a week advertising in the paper, I wondered if I was going to still be in business. You know, and to put it mildly, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
But you know, it just speaks to the fact that back in the day, and this goes back to when my father bought it, it was to own a newspaper was basically to own an ATM. I mean, these are very profitable businesses. It was never that way for us because we did this crazy thing, and it was crazy, of thinking, well, it's not just go be a monopoly newspaper in town. We're going to have 2 newspapers in town. So, of course, we also are, you know, kind of fighting the reigning world champion across the street. So, you know, we're the upstarts. We're the scrappy, you know, the scrappy cur dogs of the local media scene. And that's hard. It's really hard. The old model of newspapers never allowed for that. That's why you can go to a city of 5 million people, there's going to be 1 newspaper. I mean, of course, you got your little, you know, entertainment type papers and your alternative papers that they might distribute at restaurants and, you know, shops and whatnot. But I mean, in terms of like a general interest community news organization that does everything, there's 1. So we had 2, and no one does that. There's a long body of research into why this doesn't happen, but basically it just doesn't happen.
And you made it happen for a long time.
Yeah, we
so.
complete
A lot to be proud of.
weirdos or idiots or hopeless dreamers, whatever you want to call it. It was
Lots to be proud of.
well. Thank you.
And I mean, you've done a great job at bringing us the news. You're one of the voices of the community. And I mean,
Careful what you wish for.
I tell you, and I've just enjoyed getting to know you more. We end this with one last question.
Sure.
You're going to have to think about this because you know a lot of people. But if you could have dinner with one local person, who would it be?
My wife.
Your wife?
We're on different schedules. I'm a night person. She's a morning person. So just being able to sit down for dinner would be lovely.
Where are you taking her?
Where am I taking
Yeah,
her?
what restaurant would you choose to take her to?
Well, I mean, I don't want to answer that question because we have lots of fine restaurants in this town, and I don't want to prejudice against anyone. But we do have favorites.
Yes,
So,
I love it.
Yeah.
So,
We love to travel every
Yes.
once in a while. So a nice little Greek is good.
okay.
Like that.
I love it.
Yeah, and of course can't go wrong with Mexican.
Yes.
And sushi.
Oh,
It is fun that we have sushi at Food Line now.
I agree. And
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, it is
It's
good.
really
yeah, they do a
good.
good job over there.
Yes,
So
I
it's
really enjoy it.
perfectly respectable sushi.
It
Who
is.
knew, right?
I know. I just told someone that's not from here that just joined our team.
Right.
I said, if you like sushi, you need to go to Food Line. And he looked at me like, Food Line?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's really good.
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah.
It's very, like I say, it's very respectable.
It is.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Well, thank you so much for being here today.
You're
I
welcome.
feel honored that
No.
I'm sitting beside
That's
you.
absurd.
I do, and I just respect what you do so much.
Well, thank you.
Because it's not easy, and living in that rabbit hole can be difficult, I'm sure, and making the decisions you have to make. And I appreciate it. I know the community appreciates it, and
Well.
I want everyone that's watching and listening to know that newspaper advertising does work. So if you're a
thank
business
you.
owner, reach out to Tom, and they can hook you up. They help us out and help us get the word out about what we have going on here, and they can do that for you too. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And thank you for being here. And I mean it when I say I want to bring you back for some hot topics. So.
Well, just give me 5 minutes notice.
Okay.
And I'll
Down
try
to
not
the
to be
deadline.
more
That's
than
perfect
I
for
won't
me.
be I'll try not to be more than 5 minutes late.
Perfect for me because I live the same way you do.
Yeah. So.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening to this episode of the Rogers Radio Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe, do all the things. Comment if you want to see Tom back, because I definitely do. And we will talk to you next week. Bye.